The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. As Jesus continued his journey to Jerusalem, he traveled through Samaria and Galilee. As he was entering a village, 10 lepers met him. They stood at a distance from him and raised their voices, saying, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." And when he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourself to the priests." And they were going, as they were going, they were cleansed. And one of them, realizing he had been healed, returned, glorifying God in a loud voice. And he fell at the feet of Jesus and thanked him. He was a Samaritan. Jesus said in reply, 10 were cleansed, were they not? Where are the other 9? Has none but this foreigner returned to give thanks to God? Then he said to him, "Stand up and go. Your faith has saved you." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I love the windows in this church. Of all the churches I've served in, of all the churches I've been a part of, with the exception of the church I grew up in, of course, since that's the church I grew up in, these are probably my favorite windows of all of the ones. They're just so beautiful. They're just so jump out at you with perspective. They're just such a marvelous picture of the life of Jesus. And one of my favorite pictures, one of my favorite windows is this one right here. And this is sort of a compilation window of all sorts of healing of Jesus. He's touching the little girl, probably the Syrophoenician woman's daughter. The man kneeling on the mat is probably the paralytic he told to get up and take up your mat and walk. The young man in the background there behind Jesus, probably the son of the widow of Nain. The blind men, all of them. But what's always fascinated me about that window is way up in the corner, above the blind man's head, is some poor guy sitting all by himself. And I've talked to a lot of people about that, and I've gotten all sorts of opinions as to who that guy might be. Some say because of the way he's dressed, it's Lazarus, dressed as he was coming out of the tomb. Others say it's another one of the miracles. I wonder if that may not be one of the lepers. Maybe not the leper who came back, maybe one of the lepers who did not come back to say thank you. One of the things that makes me think that is because of what leprosy did to people. Leprosy was and still is a terrible disease. Hansen's disease. Wiped out in most of the world, still fairly prevalent in Asia and the Third World. And back then, too, in Jesus' day, just about anything was called leprosy. You got a wart, it was leprosy. You got, as the old commercial used to say, eczema, seborrhea, and the heartbreak of psoriasis. That was leprosy. All sorts of things could be leprosy. But even in the first century, even without great sophisticated medical knowledge, they understood the difference between a wart and a blister or something like that, and the real leprosy. They didn't have a name for it other than that, but they knew what it did to you. They knew what it was, and they knew what they had to do about it. Leprosy was a terrible thing. To get leprosy, real leprosy, Hansen's disease, was a death sentence. There was nothing they could do about it. You got it, you died. And not quickly. They knew you were in for a long, terrible bout of suffering. And they also knew, although they didn't understand about germs and real contagion, they also knew if you were around a real leper, you were going to get it. So not only was it a death sentence, not only did you know that your life would be ending in reality, as soon as you were diagnosed with leprosy, literally the entirety of your life ended. You lost your family, you lost your friends, you lost your job, you lost your house, you lost everything. The only thing they knew to do about leprosy is to get rid of lepers. You were immediately sent off to a leper colony, and there you lived until you died. You walked through the streets if you were allowed out, ringing a bell and yelling in front of you, "Unclean, unclean," so that if people saw you, they would run the other way because they didn't want to get near you. And in a sense, you also lost God, because you were no longer allowed into the temple. You weren't even allowed in the city, let alone into the temple. And where did you worship God? Where did you offer sacrifice? Where was the only place to get your sins forgiven in those days? In the temple. When you became a leper, you lost all of that. There was nothing left for you but pain and suffering and loneliness and emptiness. The great thing about leprosy, if there's anything great about it, it's an equal opportunity disease. Leprosy was not confined to one particular area of society. Anybody could get it. Rich, poor, slave, free, didn't matter. Those 10 lepers that Jesus met, we know one was a Samaritan. Gospel tells us that. But we don't know anything about the other 9. There may have been a couple of scribes and Pharisees in there, fallen from the heights of Jewish society into nothing.